Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Shauna K. Lester, founder of Memorable Essay, University Admissions, and Career Consulting. Today, I'm joined by someone who I'm so excited he finally said yes about speaking, and I can't wait for us to get into the conversation. But just to give you more of an introduction, with Memorable Essay, I work with people who are applying to college, to graduate school, and to jobs to help them to stand out and to win their dream opportunities. And that's through working on the overall application strategy itself, as well as the documents that comprise the application. So this morning, hi Jovan, I'm really glad and grateful, thank you, to be joined by Jovan Gayle. He is a medical doctor in training, depending on how you want to look at it. He is a doctor, now doing further training in residency, and he will be giving some well-won advice and well-earned advice to other international medical graduates during our conversation, and to doctors in general, about the residency match. So Jovan, thank you so much for deciding to talk with me today.
Good morning, Charlie. It's my pleasure.
Okay, great. All right, so Jovan, in terms of his background, he's a graduate of Wesleyan University in Connecticut, right? Is there a special name for graduates of Wesleyan? I don't know.
No, nothing I can think of. I mean, I'll always be a cardinal. So the alums are called cardinals, and that's the same. And that's the name you use whether you're a student or an alum. So still a cardinal.
Okay, all right. So the Cardinals. All right. So Wesleyan University and Monroe College in Jamaica. I actually don't know if there's a name for people who graduated from Monroe either. So.
Well, Monroe College Old Boys. So.
Okay, all right. So from Wesleyan and from Monroe. So if you're watching this and you're either, you can shout him out. So Jovan, I wanted to talk with you about having gone to university in the US, doing college in the US, and deciding to go home, your home being in Jamaica for medical school. What was your thought process around that decision?
Well, it actually turned out to be a really easy decision. One of the major limitations as an international student, if you have attended college in the US and you want to go on to medical school, one of the major limiting factors is cost. While you can apply to medical school and while you may be able to get in, if you are not a citizen or a permanent resident, then you usually don't have access to federal loans, which means you have to seek either private loans or institutional loans, and these can be much harder to get. So only a few universities that have medical schools would be able to offer you loans. So because of that, I just simply wasn't able to fund medical education in the US.
Okay.
So yeah, but really because of that, I decided to do it at home at the University of West Indies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you find, because I also meet a lot of people who they've considered, offshore medical schools or schools where they can do a part of their education in the Caribbean and a part in the US. Why wasn't that a part of your thinking or one of the options you considered?
Well, because if you attend an offshore medical school, then really, one, they're just as expensive. I mean, you think about if you research, if you look into the cost of offshore medical schools, some of them are even more expensive than U.S. medical schools or medical schools located on the continental U.S. So it really doesn't. You don't get around the cost by going offshore. The other thing is that if you attend an offshore medical school, you don't necessarily have a higher chance of getting admitted to a U.S. medical residency, because you'll still be classified as what they call an international medical graduate, meaning somebody who has attended a non-U.S. medical school. So once you have attended any medical school, once your medical school is accredited, then you can apply to a U.S. residency and you can be successful. Your chance increases if you're an American medical graduate. The vast majority of American medical graduates will match to some residency. The number that don't match is really very, very small. For international medical graduates who attend a U.S. medical school that is not on the continental U.S., it's an international medical school or one that's not located on the continental U.S., they most of the time will do their rotations or their clinical years at the U.S. hospitals. So it does confer a slight advantage because they are introduced to the U.S. clinical system. right? So you would have U.S. clinical experience, but they do have they do match their choice residencies with less frequency than American medical graduates. And then you have the international medical graduates who didn't do their primary clinical experience in the U.S.
Yes.
So that would be the category into which I fall.
Right.
Sorry?
No, I said right.
Right. So that would be the category into which I fall. Yeah. So just to correct what I said earlier, there is something of an advantage to attending an offshore U.S. medical school, in that you get guaranteed clinical experience in the U.S., but you still have a much lower chance of being successful in the match. And like I said, the cost is still very, very high.
Right. So for you, the cost factor just outweighed everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
So when it comes to clinical experience now, what advice would you give to individuals who they're going through medical training in their home country and they perhaps won't be able to foot the bill for observerships or for externships if they have to pay? What could they do in their program now as they're training to make themselves prepared to stand out in the process to match into residency in the US?
Well, if you're still in medical school, then that would probably be the best time to get U.S. clinical experience. You usually can set this up privately. There will be some cost attached, but I believe the cost for medical students is less than for somebody who's already graduated from medical school. Observerships can be terribly expensive. If you set them up through external companies, then they'll charge a premium, and then you will have to also pay for transport, and you'll also have to pay for room and board and
all of your living expenses.
All of your living expenses, exactly. So that is a lot of money. And if you consider the cost of application is going to be very, very high. You have to pay for the examinations. You have to pay to take the USMLEs, all the steps, and you have to pay for your transport to take the USMLEs. You have to pay for your study material. You have to pay for the question bank and all this stuff. So the cost keeps rising. And if you don't have all the funds readily available, then it can make the application process even more frustrating than it already is.
So doing it while you're in medical school can help you to save. But what about the people who are going to opt to not do that at all? And they just want to know, what can they do while they are a medical student in their actual program, not outside of their program? What are some of the things that they can do, that they can use that opportunity that already exists in order to become the kind of candidate who would be somebody who a program would want?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, observerships do help somewhat, but I've also in researching and looking for possible observer experiences and looking at the benefit or the utility of even doing them, I've seen where one common thread is a lot of people think, well, do you really learn anything as an observer? It does. If you did an observership, it does point to that you do have a definite interest in the area that you're observing. But I don't think it goes beyond that, and that's because the level of participation of an observer is less than for example, a medical student. Mm-hmm. So while you can observe, but you don't see patients, you don't manage patients in the same way. So your experience is really the experience really is less hands-on, and a lot of people, a lot of program directors, from what I've heard, usually they don't usually look at it as absolutely essential. Mm-hmm. Because clinical experience definitely helps. And even if you do your research, like if you're looking at programs to apply to, you will see that they'll require 6 months of clinical experience or 3 months of clinical experience, and that's very hard to get as an observer. And okay. Even if you look at the requirements for programs, they will say that some of them will flat out say that observerships don't count.
Okay, so I think I need to rephrase my question. Yeah. A medical student, and wanting to, like, first year, second year, third year medical student, mm-hmm. What can they do as a medical student in their medical program to become somebody who stands out in the application process?
Oh, okay. That's a very good question. That's a very good question. I mean, so what they can do in terms of,
how do you use it? So it's like when you were going to college, what were some of the things that you did? That kind of similar thing, the kind of things that somebody would do in college to prepare them for grad school. What are some of the things that you can do in medical school to prepare you to become somebody who's outstanding in the match process?
Well, you can study really hard and score really well on the USMLEs.
Okay.
Can get involved in research. That usually helps. Usually helps to demonstrate an interest that goes above and beyond the normal academic responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
You could doing electives in the US is probably the best thing you can do, because you do get US clinical experience, even though it's usually a shorter it's a shorter period. In So in medical school at the University of West Indies, there were designated elective periods, usually 5 weeks. So you could conceivably organize an elective in the US and have that be part of your US clinical experience, and that would also allow you to get an interview. Get a letter of recommendation from a U.S. receptor. Exactly, and that would be very, very helpful. So that is probably the most helpful thing that you could do. Apart from that, getting involved in research and scoring really well on the USMLEs.
Okay, all right, sure. And in terms of doing your own research, this is actually a question that someone asked me to ask the next person I spoke with. So in considering Canada, the USA, Australia, there are tons of options when somebody wants to do or relatively tons of options when you're trying to find a residency as an IMG, specifically like non-citizen IMGs as well. Did you weigh Canada and the US at all, and why did the US end up winning out for you?
Sure. Well, there are many. Well, because most of my research was done online and just and through talking to people. But
okay.
in Canada, for example, getting into a residency is a lot more. Getting to a residency is a lot more difficult. You can get into the Canadian system, so to speak, but you wouldn't necessarily have the same access to the training to the training opportunity. Once you get into a U.S. residency, once you complete the program, then you're guaranteed to be trained. Whereas in Canada, you can get in, you could work for some years and then apply to a residency to further your skills and knowledge, but there's no guarantee that you will get in. And in fact, some would say that it's even unlikely that you will get in.
When you say get in, did you mean fellowship? Like you mean once you complete residency?
No, sorry. I mean,
okay.
So what I'm saying is, you can apply for a job as a physician in Canada. Right. Once you have passed the requisite exams, and you can get a job like that. But in terms of being able to pursue further medical training in Canada,
right,
difficult. Those opportunities are much harder to come by.
Okay. Whereas you felt like going into residency training, then you would be allowed to go on to fellowship and so on.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's kind of a more clear-cut path in terms of making the most of the opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are you liking about residency so far? We can talk about that a little bit before we get to some tips. What are you liking about it? I know it's team no sleep. What else?
No, residency is excellent. I've really been enjoying myself.
Okay.
Part of it really is the continuous learning. If you become a physician, then effectively you're committing to lifelong learning. Right. But at this point it's taking place at such a rapid rate. I mean, I've only been a resident for a few months, but I can see where my my knowledge has expanded dramatically in just the past few months.
Nice.
So that's been really good. I mean, it's definitely challenging. The hours can be long. Eventually, sometimes you get put into some situations where you don't know what to do, but that's to be expected. I mean, like I said, this is a learning process. But I think this part, when having just started, is the most exciting time, because this is when the most rapid change happens.
Okay. All right. I hope it doesn't plateau and become boring. I doubt it will.
I don't. There's always more to learn.
Okay. All right, cool. And so for people who are doing their residency applications now, hopefully it's drawing to a close, but there are always, things left to be done. What are some of the top resources that you'd recommend? Probably 3 or 4 in terms of their actual application process.
In terms of the actual process, well, how do you mean resources? In what sense?
Yeah, so for doing their research, like are they on FREIDA? Are they talking to other people? Just any kind of resources that you use while you were trying to match that you think would be good if other people knew about them.
Sure. Well, I would definitely say talking to people definitely helps. FREIDA definitely helps. But because as I mentioned before, this process is expensive and you want to target your efforts. If you can apply to, you can apply everywhere, and that's a good strategy. It works. But if you were able to determine which programs are more in line with your background, or which programs will look upon you as a favorable applicant, then you may be able to focus your efforts better. So if you're an IMG, and if you're an IMG, then you want to look at places that, one, they accept IMGs and they have a good record of accepting IMGs, and they have IMGs in their program. Mm-hmm. That's probably going to be the most important thing strategically in terms of where to apply. And in terms of resources that help, the really only other resource I used was Member of the Essay.
Okay.
Yeah, which can I say was very, very helpful. I mean, after taking the exams, the most difficult part was putting together the whole application file, so to speak, in terms of putting together all your experiences, all of your
your accomplishments
and everything, putting them together and distilling it down to the salient facts, and making it succinct, but at the same time not leaving out any of the important details. That part was really challenging. So I was very glad to have Member of the Essay. I was very happy to have Member of the Essay help me with that part, because even how you word things, how you put things together, how you process things, or how you write things about you down so other people can process them. That's very important. And you don't want your writing or your communication to be another barrier to somebody seeing the real you, or to somebody seeing what you want them to see.
Okay. All right. So that's real cool. And we can talk some more about that. But I just wanted to go over, so you said talking with people at FREIDA. That is literally all you went by. Were you on forums? Did you have any friends who were older? Any of the people in your program, like whoever, wrote you letters? Was there anything that you were doing to figure out how to get the best letters from them, or no? You just kind of...
Well, not really. I
actually really didn't even know that. Okay, you're a minimalist.
Yeah, I just try to get. I try to keep it down to the essentials.
Okay.
That was the crucial thing. Yeah, I just kept it down to the essentials.
Okay. All right. So cool.
Yeah, and that's what I think the essential things are. Getting good scores,
mm-hmm.
and so getting good scores, applying to the right places, and really having a nice application package. Yeah. I think that's really what is one of the most necessary things. Other things like research experience, that helps. The U.S. clinical experience definitely helps. I think it helps immeasurably, but it can be hard to come by useful U.S. clinical experience unless you are trained at a U.S. affiliated medical school, or trained at an American medical school. So, given that that you can only do so much with that, I think the most important thing is getting good scores and tightening your application.
All right. Well, your letters are also pretty important. So I just want to ask you a little bit about that. Were you forming relationships with the people who wrote your letters throughout the years, or did you kind of just approach them? Because we actually didn't talk about that, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it is different because if you are in medical school, usually what's recommended generally speaking, for anybody who's writing you a letter is that you ideally you let them know that you want them to write you a letter at some point. This is shortly after meeting them, so they can have this in their mind, and then they can write you a letter after the experience. I didn't know that who was going to be writing my letters, so
Okay.
I just asked them afterwards to write me. So honestly, it wasn't planned as well as it could have, it wasn't planned as well as it could have been.
Okay.
But my hope was just that, the quality of my reputation or the quality of work would speak for itself, and I would get letters. I would get good letters.
Okay. All right. So another time, I guess I'll do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The best way to do these things in order. Okay. Cool. I actually did not know that. All right. So thanks for the shout out. I always feel inclined to tell people that I'm not here paying individuals or telling them what to say. But thank you definitely for listing me as one of the, it's so funny. I mean, it works both ways, right? As one of the resources. But I wanted to ask you, because I know we worked on the personal statements and you had 2 different personal statements in terms of different specialties, as well as the CV, but any kind of lessons that you took away for people who are going to do it by themselves, for themselves, or whatever the whole thing. What are some of the lessons on actually packaging yourself through writing that you would share with others based on what we did together?
Well, I would say think very hard about what you want to say, and think also very hard about what you want the person who is reading what you've written to think.
Right.
And think very hard about how what you say will be perceived, because you don't want to fall into the trap of underselling yourself.
Right.
In trying to appear modest, you actually don't say you don't communicate many of the things that make you a great applicant. And you also don't want to fall into the trap of going too far in the other direction and,
being the special snowflake.
Exactly. And, overselling your accomplishments, because typically people can see right through that. I mean, you have to keep in mind that the people who read your applications have been reading applications for many years. They have a lot of experience dealing with medical schools, dealing with medical students and graduates from all over the world, from all over the US. So it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to communicate anything, that you're going to be able to wow them with something spectacular.
We disagree on that, but you always say that. I completely believe that it's possible to wow somebody who has read thousands of applications with something spectacular. Wow. We disagree on that. We disagree on that.
We do disagree on that, because I think just based on probability, a better strategy would be to present yourself in such a way that they can learn the most about you and they can see all the good things about you in the fewest words. Because I always imagine that when you're reading these applications, you're reading hundreds and hundreds of them, and you don't want to spend all that time reading empty words. You want to get the point across quickly. So
right. So the first one is to think very hard about what you want to write, what you want to communicate.
Yes.
And then the second one is to think real well about what you want to be, how you want to be perceived.
How you want to be perceived.
Like what you want your words to mean.
Yes, right? Exactly.
Right. Yes. And anything else on the CV? Because I know how your CV evolved. So any words on the CV, I think hearing from you on that would be really helpful.
Yes. So when you're putting your CV together, so remember that it will be, read as a document, as a flowing document. So put it together with that in mind. Typically, when you generate the CV, you just you type in, I think it's 70 words into a block to describe what you've done. And with that kind of setup, it's easy to just it's very, sometimes it's difficult to communicate exactly what you are doing. And if you want to say that you were seeing 80 patients daily in a clinic, that's a lot more specific than saying you worked at a pediatric clinic and patients, because usually working at the pediatric clinic means you see patients, and there's different levels of working. Sorry, there's different levels of involvement. So if you are if you're taking histories, doing physical exams and ordering studies and and ordering medications, etc., and arranging treatment plans and so on, that is different from being an observer in a clinic. And you want to communicate that. So you also don't want to make it seem like you were running a clinic, because nobody, unless you're actually running a clinic, most people don't think that at university after medical school you're going to be running a clinic. Right. So you just want to be appropriate in what you write down.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. So the specificity definitely helps, because I like how you termed it, like there are different levels of involvement and we need to know where you fit. But then also in seeing those 80 patients a day, like what was the outcome of that, or what was the result of that? So basically, if we took you out of the picture, what would have been missing? That's what we need to know. We just don't want to know that you showed up, because especially at this level, you don't get brownie points for showing up. Right. And we want to know, again, I guess maybe we would disagree a little bit here, but why were things different because you were there and not somebody else was there, So you want to focus on the results and on the impact. So.
That's a very good way to put it, actually. That's a very good way to put it. You are a professional writer / writing coach, so you're probably better at expression than I am. So
yeah. Not all the time, but okay, cool. Okay. All right, Jovan. So I think all of those tips were very helpful, and I actually had 2 questions. So I'm glad it was from the ones that you were able to answer in terms of the Canada one and paying for observerships. I think that will be really helpful to the person who asked them. And so, all right, I guess my final question to you, because I know that you exercise a lot, just in terms of to wrap things up, what would you recommend for self-care in the application process? I don't know if you can actually take yourself, and are you squinting at me? How does one take care of?
I'm not. I don't think so.
All right. Okay, there's a little squint. But how do you take care of yourself during the application process? Because it can be so hectic and sometimes just so rushed, because you're doing all of these pieces at once. Exercise works for you. Do you want to tell us some more about that? Is there anything else that you recommend that people try and do?
Well, I always feel slightly hypocritical when I recommend these things to people, because I didn't do it. I would say you should sleep, but I wasn't sleeping very much. Okay. I did exercise a lot because that's kind of how I help cope. That's kind of how I deal with stress. That's actually the major way I deal with stress. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I kind of just took it as it came. I didn't really have any coping strategies. I just did my best and hope for the best. So I can't say I had a system. Some people have systems. Some people were very, very organized. They had checklists.
I like the way you said checklist. He's like, they had checklist, this thing called checklist.
That works for some people. I played a lot of it by ear. Mm-hmm. For example, when I was writing the initial personal statement, after I had a mental block. I didn't know what I wanted to say, and then I just sat down and and just started saying things or just thinking about and just writing down what I wanted to say, and it came out as a mess. But thankfully, thankfully, there was a member of the essay to help me kind of help me kind of arrange everything, so it comes out as more of a kind of refined, polished product. So.
Okay. All right. So, that's fine. That's you. You do what works. It's ad hoc. You throw something.
Right.
But Jovan is actually quite an accomplished and brilliant individual, not just theoretically, but also, in clinic from several objective reports. So that's a system that works for you. All
Right.
right.
Yeah. If it works, when it works, it works. Right.
Yeah. If it's not broke, they'll fix it, right? So,
Exactly. Exactly.
all right. All right, Jovan. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and your experiences with us today. And I hope the rest of year one in your training goes really well and that you get more sleep, even while you keep up the exercise, because you're really
I hope
needed.
so. I hope so too. But I'm honestly not too hopeful about the sleep thing.
Mm,
We'll see where it happens. Sleep is kind of
okay.
like lowest on the hierarchy of needs. Comes in right below. It comes in, a few places below exercise. So,
Right. And internet is at the top, right?
say again. What was
The internet for our generation.
that?
Yeah, we need a revision. Massage 2.0.
I don't actually use it that much in terms other than just for, the essentials, like,
Right.
Netflix. No, I'm kidding. I don't even watch a lot of Netflix or watch a lot of stuff. No, but I don't use the internet that much, but
It was a joke, Joanne.
I know it was a joke.
Okay. All right, sure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Sure.
all right.
Thank you.
All right then. Bye.
Bye-bye.